All right, good morning, y'all, and welcome back to school. Hope your break was good and relaxing. Let's get into it. So today we're going to be speaking about the Atlantic slave trade. We've been exploring our unit on Age of Exploration, looking at some of the more notable explorers, as well as where they explored, who they explored for, how it was possible for them to explore. We looked at the technology. And today we're going to look at some of the consequences of this exploration. And namely, we're going to look at the Atlantic slave trade. So you'll see under 420-2020, this heading that says Atlantic slave trade gives you sort of a breakdown of how the lesson's going to go, as well as what you should expect to learn by the end of this lesson. And once you open it up, you'll see this slideshow. Okay. And just a reminder to use this magnifying glass if you need to in order to zoom it in or out. Personally, I like it at 50%. I think you can see it better. Here's the title page, your instructions of how you're going to do this. You can read that on your own. So there's three parts to this. Part one, you're going to develop background knowledge. You're going to do that a couple of ways. You're going to read this page here that says Fast Facts about the Atlantic slave trade. I'm not going to go through each and every little bit of it, but just know that the Atlantic slave trade, of course, was the trade of African slaves over 400 years between Africa and the New World. The 1700s, it occurred between the 1500s and the 1800s, but the 1700s is really when it kicked into high gear. And it's estimated about 10 and 12 million Africans were sold in the slave trade at that time. Another way to develop background knowledge is to click on this video link here. I'm not going to do that now. It's a TED Ed. So it's about 4 minutes long. It's animated, which I like, and it gives you a little bit more details on the ins and outs of the Atlantic slave trade. Definitely check that out. From there, you're going to type your response to this question where it says, tell me 5 of the most important facts to remember about the Atlantic slave trade. It's your opinion. So I don't care what you write, but make sure that it has something to do with the Atlantic slave trade. Okay, the meat of the lesson is you are going to be analyzing 5 artifacts that have to do with the Atlantic slave trade. Again, I'm not going to go through each and every one, but we'll go through a couple so you get the idea. So this is artifact A, maps of Africa. And you can see the big question that you're going to be answering, that you're going to be focusing on is, why do you think that the major slave trading regions were on the western coast of Africa? So you'd look at the map. You can see this is the west coast of Africa. You get the Atlantic Ocean here. Here's another map. And well, let's see, they sailed across the Atlantic Ocean in the New World. So why would it be on the west coast of Africa? Well, because that is where the sailors were going to most easily export slaves from, right? If they were on the east coast of Africa, they'd have to go all the way around Africa and out the other side. Just wouldn't make sense. Okay, artifact B, we'll just look at that, and you can see these are different images that have to do with the Atlantic slave trade. You may have seen this before, but these are all slaves packed in like sardines at the bottom of a ship. And these, of course, are shackles that would be used to keep the slaves from trying to escape. And the big question you're trying to answer here is, why? What do you think life was like for slaves on a slave ship? Well, one would imagine that it was really cramped, or it was tough because they were shackled by chains. Okay, so you'd go through the rest of the artifacts. You've got artifact C, slave recounting his experience. Artifact D, which would be slave auction items. And then, of course, artifact E, slave life once you were sold as a slave. Answer the big questions here for each one, where it says type your response. And then the final thing is your reflection. Just tell me, what have you learned about the Atlantic slave trade? Okay, I am always available if you need help.